Okay, this presentation is called Lessons from a War Zone. So your workplace doesn't become one. Or change management in unusual situations. My experiences with Afghanistan started a long time before 2010 when I first went there. In the 90s, I followed up on a dream I had of one day joining the Army and joined the Army Reserve, I think at the age of 21 when I was working as a bartender. My first experiences, I decided I would go to become a signaller, which I'd been an infanteer in the reserves. I thought the SIG seemed sort of fairly normal. Radios and stuff, how bad could it be? What I didn't know at that point was it was to shape and give me the opportunity, which eventually led to change management. My first deployment was in 2010, and the build-up training began from about halfway through 2009. I was sent to join Alpha Company, and more directly November Platoon, and we began the build-up process, which was full on, a lot of hard physical work, a lot of patrolling. I suppose some of the big boys' toy stuff came back in. We slid out of ropes, out of helicopters in the middle of the night, and all this kind of stuff. You see the little red bit marked out? That's Tarin Kowt. Tarin Kowt is where a large part of Australians were deployed to. There are others up in Kabul, which also looks like it says Kabul, and some down in Kandahar as well. I was fortunate enough over the 2 times I went there to go to all of those locations. But often it was just driving around, especially on the first trip. So we got out there for our first hit out. I spent about a week setting up the van and setting up the Bushmaster. You may have seen pictures of Bushmasters on the television. They're these huge 4-wheel drive looking things, and they're the only thing that Australian Defence Industries has made in the last 15-20 years that actually works. This is what nighttime patrols are like in Afghanistan. You lead off, it's exactly like that. It's black silhouette. This one doesn't give you a lot of detail. But we stepped off at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were to make our way to a hill to overlook a village area to do what's called overwatch. Overwatch can be called it's a term meaning a lot of different things in defence, but overwatch in this instance was to sit up on top of a hill in overwatch and observe enemy movements throughout the village below, because we had information or intelligence that the Taliban were moving heavy weapons through there. So we were going to give that intelligence to another group who would act on it later. It was a quiet trip, most of this trip, and it frustrated a lot of the guys that were on the team because they had been in a lot of gunfights. We had guys in our teams that had been 4 and 5 deployments at that stage. So this to them wasn't exactly, killing it. We patrolled for the first part once we stepped off at 1 o'clock that morning, and this is where I first discovered how random a country Afghanistan is. We were patrolling through the desert. It was sparse land. There wasn't tree cover or anything around, and up in the distance we saw a light flashing. And first thought is, oh, here we go, something's going to happen. And as we got closer, we were being as quiet as we possibly could. It looked like it was just one person flashing this light. So we all took a knee, and a couple of shooters and one of the interpreters wandered over to see what was going on, and the interpreter came out of the dark and approached this guy who was flashing his mobile phone around. Now Afghanistan, they live a 14th century agrarian economy. They live in mud huts. They have very primitive lifestyle, very primitive rules. However, there are a few pieces of technology that have made their way through. Mobile phones are one of them. Every single person in Afghanistan has at least one mobile phone. Some have 2. Probably to call the Taliban, I wouldn't know. However, it's more common than you think. However, there's mobile phone towers everywhere, and they don't get bombed and they don't get blown up because everybody uses them. So anyway, we're in the middle of nowhere, and this guy is a goat herder, and he was out looking for his favourite goat. He'd gone missing. And he was over in a quarry, because everything looks like a quarry out in that part of the world, flashing it around, and you could see the light flashing off what looked like walls. And the interpreter had a chat to him. He said, no, mate, I'm just, I'm good. I'm just looking for my goat. So we patrolled off, and hopefully we didn't get seen. But the fact that we didn't see any troop movement may have meant that he saw something and reported it on. We don't know. However, that wasn't the point right now. I was carrying 55 kilos about to be up a mountain. So patrolled on, and I handled it okay, I thought, until we got to a point where everything changed in terms of the terrain. We started to go uphill, but it wasn't just going uphill. There was shale type surface on the ground. So we started climbing up this hill, and before too long I started falling over. my legs start sliding out from underneath me. And I don't know if you've ever either lifted extremely heavy weights with your legs or tried to jump up and down on one of those high jump mats. Very soon your legs turn to jelly and they start shaking. Yeah, it only took about 20 minutes, I reckon, until my legs started to go to jelly as well. World's most embarrassing moments, okay. Then at one point we had to put on night vision equipment, and then looking through night vision equipment, the Australian Army is like looking through a toilet roll with green cellophane on the end, okay? Except you've got two nowadays, which is great, but you have no depth perception, and you have no, it's tunnel vision, so you've got to turn around to see everything, which really doesn't help an awful lot. So add that to sliding down. It's a good thing that they're attached to a helmet because I started falling on my head as well. Eventually we decided to modify our position and we went to an easier hill because they didn't think I was going to make it much further. So we slept on the side of the hill that night. A couple of hours. Then we woke up and went to our overwatch position and we saw another goat herder. And this one had a ribbon on his favourite goat. At least that's what we decided it was his favourite goat. But it was incredible just to see people living in the way that you read about in things like the Bible. I thought I was in a biblical theme park. Next time I try and be funny, would you mind walking around the room so it looks like everyone's having a good time? Thank you. So we sat in our overwatch for a while, realised there was no enemy movement coming through, and so we patrolled down to the village. And here's where it really struck me. I saw these massive mud walls for the first time. I wanted to go up and kick them to make sure that they were real. It just was so surreal to me. And they had these orchards that were beautifully manicured with crisscross ditches dug in between for the water. They reckon they could make water go uphill. And nobody was interested in us at all. They'd obviously had heaps of troops come through there. But the men had long beards. They had the Afghan robes. In fact, I've got some Afghan robes that I was given on my second deployment. I should have brought them along. But people were staring into space. They didn't care. They certainly weren't interested in us. So we patrolled past there. We had a bit of a break. We had a very low slung helicopter fly in very close to the water, and they waved at us and off they went again. It was our American Overwatch, helicopter Overwatch, and they were flying on what was called a Kiowa. Anyway, my sense of wonderment was soon crushed when we started back as fast as we could to our vehicle drop-off point. It was a 16-kilometre forced march, and we moved as quickly as we could. Now, this didn't really do me any great favours, as I felt my back was starting to give out. It was just getting tired. I had to stop and rest and have a break and then keep pushing, and things were just getting harder and harder. Well, at the end of that, we got back to the vehicle drop-off, and we slept the rest of the afternoon. In the middle of the night I woke up and I was throwing up and coming out everywhere, not to make it too disgusting sounding. But that's what happens when your body, when you pushed it way too far, and it starts complaining. So it complained. Anyway, the next day I got had bags of IV fluid put into me, and it took 4 litres of IV fluid to bring me back to reality. Now, if you consider that the human body only has about 6 litres of water in it, it gives you an idea how close I perhaps came. However, human body has a way of bouncing back and does so incredibly well. I didn't have another problem physically on the rest of the trip. Not even sprained ankle or anything, and that was travelling a lot further distances at times, like the day in the photo that I just showed you. However, it was, as I mentioned, it was a quiet trip the rest of the time, until such times as I removed myself, 2 weeks after I removed myself from the platoon. Now, I had a platoon commander, and as a radio operator in a platoon, you are essentially working as his PA in a lot of ways to get his communications up and a lot of other things. But my platoon commander bullied me to such a degree that, for my own sanity, I had to remove myself from the platoon. So, first lesson from a war zone: what do you do when you have that workplace conflict that just feels unfair? Now, I'm not going to say that bullying is that common because I just don't know. However, we've all been treated unfairly at times, and sometimes if you've had a bit of bullying in your past or whatever, you might not be sure whether it's bullying or not, but it could easily be construed as it. So in this situation, I just took it as professionally as I could. I confronted the guy. I said, look, I can't work for you anymore. I then went to my chain of command, because I had a signals chain of command as well, and got them to remove me and did it as professionally as possible. I was praised by my company sergeant major. He said, we're all really proud of the way you handled this, because I was twice the size of the guy. They said, we're afraid you're going to beat him to death with the radio. He wasn't a very well liked guy. And he said, look, if you had tried to choke him outfield, it might have taken us about half an hour to stop you, but that wouldn't have been good. But I pulled out and I had a much better trip. And one guy in particular decided he was going to teach them that the world was round. Now remember what I said, they live a 14th century agrarian economy in a Muslim country, a very, very strict Muslim country. Despite the fact, and there's some realities there that, you know, some of them can't even read the Quran, but that's beside the point. Who they are and how they live in that regard, their religion, their culture, and all those things shape them. So trying to tell them that the world's round is a waste of time because they're not going to believe you. But try as they might. So I decided that wasn't going to work. We weren't going to worry about that. Now, teaching high frequency radios, you need to know about the ionosphere and the troposphere and all these other spheres, okay? I made it easy. I said to them, you know how there's clouds in the sky? They go, yeah. I said, well, it's kind of like the radio sends up a signal and it bounces off the clouds. No, we got it, sweet. Got past the world being around in one simple sentence. And as I said, I was told that they were lazy. Well, when I got into a classroom with them, I made agreements with them. I got them to feel like they were the boss. I got them to choose when we came back from breaks. Now I know that they wanted to come back from lunch at 3 o'clock if we broke at 1. So I'd say, how about we come back at 2:45? And so they'd start going, no, 3, we want to go. 3 it is. Often, these so-called lazy people who do not want to learn would beat me back from class, beat me back from lunch. I'd open the door 5 minutes early, they'd be all sitting there waiting for me. I told them from the very first point, and it's just like your intention, if you're running a change program, you've got to have when people are impacted, you've got to have some empathy for what may be happening, and hopefully that'll shape some of the interventions that you give. I started with the intention that I'm a guest in their country. I'm a very grateful guest. I'll tell you what, the rates of pay would have made anyone grateful. However, I was incredibly inspired by these people and the way that just the fact that they had been through so much, as I was later to discover. So I'd said to them, at any stage in our dealings together, I want you to realise that you're the ones in charge, you're the ones who are going to determine how much we learn here. We're going to try together, and I'm going to try and help you as much as possible, but I am a guest. Okay, so let's just see how that rolls and see what we can get to together. Early on, I had some quick wins. Talking about quick wins today, I had some quick wins early on when one of them came up to me 2 days into the job and said, where's my certificate? I said, what was the certificate? I got the interpreter. I said, what was the certificate for? I've been asking him, he goes, I did a course a little while ago, what's the certificate for it? I said, did everyone else get the certificate? He goes, yep. I said, all right. So I went and made the certificate, photocopied, printed it up, and I waited until the end of the day when everyone was sitting on the balcony and came outside and got the interpreter to help me announce it, and said, very sorry that it was late, but he just wanted to present him with this certificate, and everyone give him a round of applause. And everyone did, of course, and he made this guy feel 10 feet tall. And his sergeant looked over at the interpreter and goes, we got the right guy here. That was a quick win that helped to strengthen relationships from the beginning, and onwards we've worked. Another thing comes up with this area here. I was out trying to teach radios one day, and I had to drive back into the base in one of the vehicles. Now this vehicle is quite possibly this one. Now this one is a bomb. This one would break down quite regularly, so all I could do not to have to push it back into the base. And I came out, and this section here, I parked just near it to swap out the vehicle and to swap out the radio. And as I did, there was about 2 platoons that had just come back in from another mission, and they all came out all at once. Now we often said that this is just a reality. I'm not saying this to be offensive towards the partnering force, because I have a lot of respect and concern for them. But they would come out and they'd be like they're primary school kids. Now our interpreters, we used to say, were like high school kids because of just their level of social maturity. Our interpreters were actually US citizens, but they were Afghani nationals originally. So they hadn't had a lot of the same developmental experiences, and particularly the locals, the partner force, that's where they really lacked in terms of development, because they didn't have a formal schooling. They were a lot smarter than you'd ever think possible. They were incredibly smart people, but socially it was just like high school, a primary school, and it was like, gimme, as they're always asking. So I drove the vehicle back in, I went to get the radio off, and I got swarmed around them. Now, keep in mind I'm 9,000 odd kilometres from home, middle of nowhere. I had this belief that I'm a guest in their country, so I really didn't want to get angry with them. And all of this energy comes swarming around me, and I'm just trying to get a job done, and all I want to do is get back out there to get the lesson finished. So my stress level starts going up and up and up and up through the roof. So I walk back inside, to the office, I kicked the desk, I couldn't find some keys on top of that for the next vehicle, I blew my top. Thankfully, it didn't happen too often on this trip, but this happens to all of us in every workplace. And I've spent many years teaching people how to be rational and overcome all those things as well. Well, in this situation, I wasn't particularly rational at all. So how do you deal with that? How in your workplace? How's the best way to deal with it? Well, in war, things can escalate pretty fast. I came back, I went for a bit of a walk, and I made my apologies. That was the first thing. And then I talked it through. But when I sat back and rationalised what had happened, I realised that all of these factors that I just shared with you were all around me. And then I had to realise that you've got to have a reality-based perspective. Of course, I'm not going to get to go home for another few months, and I've just got to deal with that. And of course, my friends at Partnering Force were not going to develop straight from primary school to mid-20s or older adults, are they? No, that was not going to happen either. So this is a reality. They're always going to do that. I'm always going to feel this way. Where's the proof? I have to actually get angry about all that. Just smile. They're okay. And subsequently, I was okay. So that was the last time I actually blew my top. But if ever you have this situation, I know no one in here ever gets angry or stressed. But if something at work is getting you that way, the easiest way to rationalise it is to ask, where's the proof I have to get so upset? And understand the reality that things are going to be that way irrespective. You need to be able to change how you feel about it, not the situation itself, because it's like the circle of influence. That's probably the one thing you can change. So, points to remember. Try to ride in a helicopter where the window is shut. Not one with no glass. But be prepared to think outside the box. Get creative. No one is likely to shoot you. How bad can it be? They were likely to shoot me where I was. And that pistol that I showed you I had on my hip before, I had a much smaller one. And then but I hadn't trained much in the small one, but I knew the big one intimately. And when I got offered this role, I went the next day to the Q store and upgraded. It's a people game. Think relationships first. Mission is often more important than your comfort zone. And remember, irrational is easy. We default as human beings to being irrational. However, we are capable of becoming rational. And sometimes it takes a little bit more work. I'll be more than happy to come back and talk to you about that some other time. So thank you. Thank you everybody for having me along. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this story once again. I've discovered change through doing that. I got back from Afghanistan and I'm a member of North Bondi RSL, as I said earlier, and I was patrolling down on the beach one time. I made the mistake of being a slave to my ambition and took on 2 subjects at uni. I did 2 subjects at uni whilst I was on this deployment, but I took on 2 subjects over summer, and I was doing a psych degree. I was starting to freak out. It was just too much, and all I needed to do was unwind, and I thought, there's no way I can become a psychologist. So I was down there, and I was talking to one of the mums and her son. They were both on the same patrol, and she was a chartered accountant at Westpac, and I said, I'm trying to find some sort of application to the corporate world, because I don't think I want to be a psychologist. I don't think I can be. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've done a psych degree. Is HR the way to go? She goes, no, you need change management. I said, what's change management? She goes, start looking it up. She goes, the biggest problem will be finding 4 weeks a year for holidays. Thankfully, the contract I'm working on now has been kind enough to let my fiance and I take our honeymoon at start of September. So I'm incredibly grateful. But change has been an incredible ride so far, and this is where it started for me. I had infrastructure development, I had stakeholder management, I had all of those things that do with change. I had stakeholder mapping, analysis, training and development, the lot. So I was passionate about it. So, and I get to be one of you wonderful people who does this every day as well. So it's been exciting. So thank you once again.